We are in Module 7. That will be the last module before your midterm exam. We will finish Chapter 5. We will continue to finish about loop and introduce how to read and write files on Wednesday's class. Then Chapter 1 to 5 will be in your midterm exam. So we see what we will talk about in this video. We will introduce the last loop we will talk about is the for loop. Last week we talked about while loop and the do-while loop. So then we'll have the other type of loop is we call for loop. So the for loop, the same thing, they are very useful to repeat, to work on anything you want to calculate or display. But the most important thing for the for loop is they are for the counter control loop. The counter control loop, of course, we did that in the while loop or do-while loop. Then you need to add a counter. But sometimes the while loop also can using for the user input. So it's not like we don't know how many times the user will do. So that's a good thing about the while loop. While loop can using for any different kind of situation for your while condition. The for loop will be a little different. For loop mostly we're using for the counter control because we always have a counter. So we see what the format look like. So the format for the for loop, you have to write like this way. The same thing, we will have a keyword is the for. So we have the for keyword. Then followed by the for, you have a parenthesis. So before in the parenthesis for the while loop, we only have condition. So the same thing for the if, you have expression. But for the for loop, the parenthesis, we have the specific 3 statements you need to include. So that's why you can see here, I have the initialization, then semicolon, then the test, then semicolon, then update. So later we will talk about one by one each statement. So beginning, I just told you the initialization, just you need to assign the initial value for the counter. Because remember, for loop is for the counter control loop. So you need to give them the initial value for the counter. Then you need to have a test. This one is the same thing like we say the condition in the while loop, but we put in the second part for the for loop. So you have the first one is the initial value for the counter. Then this one is the condition. So every time before they can go to the loop body, they will check if this one is true. If this one is true, we go to the loop body. Otherwise, we finish. So then the last one we call updated. We say update. So this update is you want to how to update your counter. So your counter, maybe you want to increment, you want to decrement. So that's your decide here. So then you see after this for loop, you have 3 statements. So then you have another braces. So this code block is what you want to repeat to work on that. If the test is true, I execute this code block. So then after I finish, then write. So then I come back, I update the counter value. So then I test again. So we see if I want to get into the loop body again. So then here is the for loops format. So then one thing is you just see here for your for loop, they do have 2 semicolon, okay, but only for the initialization and the test. For after the update, actually you don't need to have another semicolon. So that's the for loop syntax. So we see more in detail. So the same thing we told you, the for loop syntax is you have for keyword, space, parentheses. You have initialization, then you have test, you have update, then the braces is your code block. So how they work on that? Okay, so the first thing they perform initialization. Initialization is the first thing when we perform. We will assign the default value for the counter. Afterward, so initialization actually only do one time. So the first thing, when you come to the for loop, you will initialize the counter value. Then you will do test. You just evaluate the test expression. If that's true, I execute my code block. The same thing, if that's false, I just finish. I skip the code block, I go to the next line. So after you finish the test, and you execute either statement or terminate. So then if that's true, you execute the statement, right? So after you finish, you will execute the update. So usually we will do the counter increment. So we increment the counter. So then after we're done, we go back to the test. So we evaluate the test expression again. So on the other hand, you come back to the statement on the item 2. If the evaluation test is true, I execute the statement. If false, I finish. So after that, after you finish code block, right, so you update. So one thing is, here you can see, we only perform the initialization one time. So then 2 and 3, we just repeat to work on that. If the test is true, I execute the code block. If that's false, we finish, right? So that's here is the termination. Possibly after the test, you just finish. However, if that's true, you continue execute your code block. Then after you finish the code block, you need to go to the update. So you execute the update, then update increment the counter, then you check your test. You see that's why your number 3, you go back to the number 2. So that's the logic about the for loop. So we just here quickly see one simple example. Okay, so usually what the for loop we do is you can either define your counter outside, or a lot of time we just do the declaration and the assignment in the initialization together. Okay, so actually usually we do this way. Because one thing is, most of the time the counter using the for loop for the for loop only for the for loop only. So that's why you can declare this variable inside the initialization. But if you want, like earlier I showed you, I did declare count outside. This one also okay. But one thing is just depends on you want to use that afterward or not. So that's why most of the time you see look like this. Because the counter only using for, if this counter only using for this for loop, we can declare in the initialization and assign the value. So then after you're done, you see, you tell me, because one thing, this example, we want to print hello for 5 times. So the counter, you see, this one is, the second one is our condition. So count less than equal to 5. So then the same thing, right? We do the increment. So here you will do the post increment or pre-increment. Actually, it doesn't matter because they only update. They don't use in this statement the count value. They only care is afterward. Afterward, then we do the check again. So that's why you will see how they will do that. So then you see you will have the count equal to 1. So that's they start. When they start, initialization do one time. Count equal to 1, right? So then we test. So 1 less than equal to 5, correct. So that's why I execute my statement next one, or the code block. But here, because we only have one line, so we only do one line. So after we're done, count equal to 1, right? So then we come to the update. So we update count from 1 become 2. So after you're done, you check the test again. So 2 less than equal to 5, good. So then I execute again. Every time I execute, I go to update. So count equal to 3. After update, I evaluate again. So that's true. So I print. So after I done, right, so I come here, update. So count equal to 4. So then check we do the test. So that's true. So then we execute our loop body again. After we're done, we go to the update. So that's 5. So then you go to the test. Okay, so still true. So I execute this line. So after I do that, so I update, right? So now count equal to 6. So then you test again. So this time become false. So when you are false, you don't execute the loop body. So then you go to the next line from the loop. Okay, so I hope you understand this example. So this example you can run and test your chapter 5 example 3. So we see that, okay, so then I want you to update to print the hello 100 times. Okay, so then let's do together. We go to example 3. So you see this one is example 3, right? So before we print hello 5 times, but we're using the while loop. So now how should we change to become for loop? So let me show you now. So in order to change to the for loop, right, your count is number inside or outside doesn't matter. Okay, but one thing is since we use the count in the PowerPoint file, I just using the count for now. Then I don't have while loop. I need to use the for loop now, right? So right, so for. So like I say, you can declare your count inside. So give them the default value 1. This initial value, not default value. Okay, so count equal to 1. I want to do 5 times, so I do count less than equal to 5. Okay, so don't forget this one is check. So then we update. So count plus plus. Okay, so then after we done, right, actually we just hello, right? So we print hello how many times? So then since we don't have number, we don't have increment, because while loop, we increment inside the loop body. But for loop, our update is here. So that's why here depends on you want to do line by line hello, or you want to do the tab, either way. Okay, so then you see that's our example 3 to change to the for loop. Okay, so of course, don't forget you need to run your program to see if that's right. Okay, so right, so you see we show 5 times hello. So now remember my question, right? So we say, can we change to print hello 100 times? So if I want to print hello 100 times, how should I do? Right, so actually you see you still start from 1, but now you do 100. So then you run. Now of course I have a lot of 100 hello, so you didn't see the whole thing. Okay, so that's our example 3. So the next couple slides I don't talk again because I already told you many times. So that's why I just want you to explain to yourself again. So you see the for loop, step 1, we initialize. Step 2, we check. If that's correct, we go to the loop body. After we done, we update. So right after update, you see, go back to the step 2, check again. Maybe step 3, maybe go back to the step 2. Okay, so that's the loop. If we put it in the flow chart, they will like this. You see, initialization only do 1 time. So here is your test. So if that's true, you see out on. So if that's true, you go to the loop body. So don't forget you update. So if you update, right, so then you come back, check again. So if false, they finish. But if that's true, after they finish the loop body, they need to update, then go back to the test. So that's the flow chart for the for loop. I hope you understand that. Then you have another example you need to see. So this one is the same thing we're using for loop. But this time you see the for loop, we will print the number square. Okay, so this one actually we're using that for the while loop before too. So now we just want to print number from 1 to 10. So you want to do that, you see here is initialization. Your num, your count is beginning value. Then your test, then you increment. So loop body will only display the number and the square. We have the space to set up. So you can see after this, when you run the program, they will be like this.